Welcome to another episode of Design Theater. Today we're going to be talking about the American comic book artist Will Eisner. I'm not super familiar with his work. I have read a couple of his books, but he's very popular. He's very well known for being able to do like these really cool comic strips that pretty much tell an entire story in one page. He's pretty much considered, an expert in the field of storytelling. So I wanted to look at some of the stuff it is that he's done and share some of the work that he's created. Will Eisner is the creator of Spirit. So if you remember that movie adaptation that happened probably like 10 years ago of the Spirit that was done kind of in the Sin City style, the way that the Sin City movie was done, that's kind of a similar style to what Will Eisner does. He does mostly pen and ink, and he can get pretty abstract and pretty creative with the way that he does his ink work. And since I work primarily just in ink in the comics that I do, I think that it's pretty useful to look at this guy's work. So let's see what we notice whenever we go through some of these pages. So this first one, if we go by each panel, the first thing it is that I notice in this panel is that he doesn't really put a lot of detail, but he has a lot of life in the drawing itself, right? So he's got like these gestures of these people walking on the street here and here, and then he's got some thrown in back here. But really, we notice right away that the focal point, what he wants to get across here, is clearly the connection between this hot dog stand and the man leaning on it, and our character who's walking down the street, right? So how does he do that specifically? Well, he lets everything else in the background fall into like a crosshatch. He's just putting down some lines just to kind of show you that this area has dimension and this area has dimension. But then we see that he'll use like a white outline for like where maybe water is, right? So this adds another level of dimension. Then he's just throwing down some very simple lines in perspective that if we take the perspective back, the way that you can figure out the perspective is to basically start at the end and then take it all the way across and see where it ends up. I'm not sure what's going on here. Give me 1 second. So yeah, let me find the vanishing point. So the vanishing point is somewhere around here. Somewhere around right here. Right? And then we can see the same thing going on over here. This is going back to the same vanishing point, basically. It's all going in this general direction. So everything that he has in the environment is basically just crosshatch lines. But then when it comes to these two characters here, we see that this is a completely white shape and a crosshatch background, right? With a shadow underneath. And then we have this unusual white shape that connects us from this white shape over to the only dark, completely black shape that we have over here, which is our character, right? So that's how he makes the connection between the two. He's literally drawing a line from this character to that character. We then get another simplified view of this, right? Like he doesn't have to throw in a lot of detail in order to tell these stories. And then it shows him going to a pizza place. It looks like the guy's throwing the pizza. And he walks out of the store with the pizza. see the perspective has changed a little bit, and we see the smells of that are coming around the vent up here are going all the way across to the other place, which is the Chinese restaurant, right? So they're basically leading us all the way over there. And then we get another version of that comes up behind him and goes into the second panel. So it's almost like he's walking and then he has his pizza and then he smells something that's coming from this side as this shape is looping around him. And he turns around and he goes back and we see him walking out with the pizza and with the box of Chinese food. And then we see some figures standing back here, right? Then we get to the punchline, which a lot of his stuff were kind of like these punchline kind of illustrations, which is that his wife was at home cooking the whole time. And again, you know, he doesn't have to use any kind of words to get this across. That's what I love about it. It's completely visual storytelling. So let's go ahead and let's go to the next one. Yeah, I mean, like his pen and ink work was pretty extraordinary. I mean, like, I love seeing an illustration like this that has a completely black background and then white on top of it. I think it looks really, really cool. And I think there's some really good elements of contrast in this piece. Right? We have these different characters here. So we got two guys over here. Look like they're waiting to get the spirit or something. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but it's an incredible piece. Incredible. And you have these shapes connecting to one another as these branches go across. You have a contrast between these very square shapes and these more organic shapes, right? And notice that this is kind of drawing a circle around where he wants our attention to go. It's kind of creating this loop here, right? Something like this. Something like this. But notice that he leaves enough of room between the tree and the foot in order to create that nice silhouette. That's what I really like about a lot of the black and white stuff, is like you can get some really good silhouettes. And then we have another figure back here, and I just love the way that he does this. Like he drops everything into black back here, but then he has just the light with this character, and they're illuminating the space around them, right? Let me see if I can find some more. Yeah, so stuff like this is really cool. He's riding a bus. He's going by a window. He sees that it's a couple undressing. They're getting frisky with one another. And he goes back to reading the paper. So it's interesting because he's using a couple of different elements to show you the time that is passing, right? Or that he's passing through a space, even though he is stationary. So we see like this this light right here, right? And we see this almost as like this is almost an instant, because there's very little change in between these two. But there is a change that is implied in between these two panels, a change of time, right? A space of time. So these three panels, they almost feel like they are pretty much instantaneous, like he's instantaneously turning his head, because this has not moved that much, right? But now it's starting to move. and we see that it's maybe a third of the panel, right? And then in the other third, we see the couple. So this is a great way that he uses this part to kind of frame the characters, and then he also has this other element, which is giving you this feeling that like he's going to miss his opportunity to see to see what's really going on. This moment's going to pass him up, right? Because there's this thing that's behind him. And then we see that he's adjusted his posture. And now he's looking more this way. And then we also see that this light post right here takes up almost half of it, right? Basically half in the middle. And then our vision is also becoming obscured as the viewer as to what it is that we're seeing. And everything else is just implied because now at this point his posture is completely changed. The light is now here in the last third of the image, and we really can't see anything from that point on. And then we see that he just goes right back to reading the paper. This is also stuff that I've been looking at as far as for inspiration. I think it's good to have other artists that you like have their stuff up next to yours so you can kind of weigh against it and understand like where the bar is set for this sort of thing. So I like that he can show movement through multiple places, but without necessarily needing a lot of detail, without needing a lot of without needing a lot of backgrounds. You can tell that he's being very efficient with the way that he's doing things. You could see how another artist might have taken an entire panel. My first instinct would have been to take an entire panel and to do a complete background with people back here and everybody's hanging out, and that could potentially be one solution. There's not just one solution. One of the ideas you could do for redrawing something like this is you could look at it from the perspective of um, creating more contrast. If we had people back here that were happy and they were drinking with their friends and whatnot, then that might produce a certain amount of contrast for this lonely character here in the foreground. But the way that he does it still communicates the point the way he wants to communicate it, but it's also very efficient because he doesn't have to worry about the background. He doesn't have to worry about these two panels really making sense because we get a sense from this that he's really using the medium of comics to give you a full illustration experience when you look at the page. It's not storyboards, it's a comic book. So he's getting creative with the way that he's illustrating how time moves on a given page, right? In this one scene, this one page right here, we see the person walking alone, we see him stepping into a bar, sitting, and then he's listening to some music as somebody plays on the jukebox. So there's a lot going on there. Oh, this one's a good one. Yeah, so you have, right in the middle, you have the couple looking at each other, and then you can see them daydreaming about, and it's very smart that he didn't put words in the bubbles, right? Because it's immediately understood that this is like an implied story. You can kind of put your own words into what it is they might be saying in any particular moment, right? So you have these two illustrations of these two characters, and then you have them both thinking, obviously, about different things, right? So really, really good uh, storytelling. Here's another one. You know, like I mean, these are just so cool because he composes them without being restricted. You know, like if there's anything we can learn from Will Eisner, it's understanding how to compose an image better, right? Because again, you can have this big story moment, which is what's going on right here. We really want to illustrate the big story moment, and then we want everything else to be kind of like an accompaniment to that, right? So we even see visually, he will illustrate how a character thinks, right? So he's thinking about knocking somebody out. Who is he thinking about knocking out? I don't know, but that's what he's thinking about. And so he drew it in a thought bubble above his head. And then we see that they got to be here somewhere. There's a fire going on in this building. There might be somebody trapped in it. So we see the movement from him and the thought that he's having. So that might be it. It might be him punching the door, to him opening up the the room and seeing the person laying on the ground with the fire, and then we see the hero shot, which is him coming up with the person in their hands, right? So he's very efficient with the way he tells his stories. Let's just go ahead and flip through a couple more of these and then we'll call it. The young lady looks like she's trying to get a gun off of him or something. She has something in her hand right here. What is it? Is that a gun? There's a gun maybe in his... Or is that money? I'm not sure. I guess I would have to read the pages that come before this. Um, so yeah, we have this young lady with this old man. And then we have another great framing shot. You know, the hatching on the windows makes it feel like it's raining. You know, and that adds to the feeling of the scene. Another one-on-one, another one-page story. You know, we see a young boy injured here, and then we see a cop escorting the old man away as they put the young boy into the ambulance, and then we see the man walking defeated and sitting in his apartment. Will Eisner was known for doing stuff that had very serious storylines. Um, so yeah, I like the way that these black shapes. Again, it's the same thing. Like he's being creative with the way he frames things. You know, he's thinking about this silhouette of this piece and how it will connect with this one. And he's contrasting between white shapes on a black background and black shapes on a white background. He's contrasting back and forth. And then obviously we see the way that these two are connected as these lines eventually point us to the character up here. Let's go ahead and get through another couple of these. It's another comics page. Very cool. I love this shot. It's an awesome shot. I think this might be it. We'll call this. Okay, so Looks like a guy is running to get on the train. He tries to push himself in. Push, push, push. And he can't get in. And so he's just left standing there. And we get a sense of motion because of the sheets that are coming up. All right. So, like I said, there's a lot to learn from him in terms of like his ability to tell stories. So hopefully this gave you some ideas. Oh, I guess I've got even more on here. So hopefully maybe this gave you some ideas or some inspiration. And I'll put links in the description below if you want to see more of Will Eisner's work. Thank you guys for watching. Take it easy.